Hi, welcome to the DIY Photo Organising Podcast. I'm Fiona from Photo Helper.
And I'm Chantal from Simply in Order Photo Organising. Imagine you can find any photo at any time at the click of a button. We are here to show you how.
So let's get started. Hi, and welcome to episode 9 of our DIY Photo Organising Podcast. Today we're going to be going through metadata. This might be a new word to some people, so we just thought it would be a good opportunity to explain a little bit about what that word means and how it might relate to you with your DIY photo organising project as you're going through and getting all your photos organised yourself. So what we thought we'd cover today, just a few quick things. We thought we'd just let you know what metadata is and also whether or not you think it might be necessary to add it to your photo collection. And if you do decide to, we thought we'd just explain a little bit about how you might be able to do that.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so hi Chantal.
Hello.
Hello.
By the way, yes.
All right, so if you would start us off with explaining what is metadata. What is this metadata thing?
I know, it's a bit of a thing.
It is.
Look, we will try and keep it simple.
Yes.
So in the most simplest word, probably, it is information about a photo, about a picture.
Perfect. And
there are international standards, but we're not really going into that. It gets really technical, but if you're interested, you can, Google IPTC, which is that standard that I mentioned, and that's internationally valid, and you get heaps of information and guides and what have you, but it's way too technical. We don't really need that today. All you need to know is metadata is information about the photo.
Perfect.
Yes.
All right. So what kinds of metadata or information about the photo would most people say, just say they've taken a photo with their phone or any device, what information is already captured on that photo, say, without even, what options are there that for some of that information that's already being captured?
Yeah, that's a good question. People might not be aware that there is actually a whole lot of information that's being captured in the background. And these days with the digital cameras and the phones, they're really advanced. So a lot of things happen in the background without us noticing. So there is one layer, so to speak. So you've got the image, and then the next layer will be that automatically embedded data. That's kind of wherever you move that picture in the future, you might move it from your phone to your computer. This data will be embedded in the photo, so it travels with the photo.
Maybe in the file, not
in the
file. You won't see it on the photo.
Yes. Yeah, you don't see it.
Okay, in that file.
Straight away, you can go and have a look at what is there, but
Okay, so
we're not quite going there yet. So they do differentiate between the so-called EXIF data, that's EXIF.
Yeah.
And what that is, it shows us how the photo was taken. So, for example, with what camera, the model of the camera, what were the settings on the camera, of course the date, that's a really important one. That's why personally I always encourage people, make sure that the date on your camera or device is correct.
Oh my
because
goodness.
then you've got so much information.
Yeah, I've had a few issues with people I've worked with in the past that just those, and it might only be 24 hours out.
Yes.
But when they're merging it with other photos and
it happens a lot when you travel.
It's true.
Yeah, and some people have their phone, for example, adjusting automatically to the local time, and others don't. And then what you just mentioned, when you merge them, we share all our photos of the trip that we did together.
And they're not in order. And they're just all over the place,
Painful for us photo organisers. We don't like that. Another information that's often retained, depending on the settings, again, on your camera or your model, is geolocation. Especially on the phone, if you've got the location service on, that will be embedded into the photo file. Basically, it's like it's burnt in. So, and that can be really helpful for later on.
Yes, yep, absolutely. And I think, understanding that people can be quite aware of security risks and things like that, of being watched or being able to be tracked and things like that. So it is a personal choice, but really it can be very helpful to have that on when you're looking, even when you're searching for photos. You can zoom in on a certain area.
Yeah.
Or a trip or a part of the world, and that's just another way to locate photos quickly. So it's a great feature if that's an option that you choose to take. Yeah.
Very good.
So, so what else? So if that's the information that is how it was taken, then the other option is to add in information after the fact of when the photo's been taken, and that is about the photo. So there are things that people may want to add in about that photo or that time or the place or the event and things like that. So what kind of fields of information can be added into that digital file?
A lot, as you mentioned. The most
there's literally 20, 30 fields in some of these. Really, there's a lot. But the main ones maybe that we can change or add.
From experience, I think one of the biggest one is keywords or tags.
Yep.
It's pretty much the same. Or who's in the photo, of course, people. And these days there's software that can help to speed up that process if we want to add that information manually.
Yep.
But I think these are good starting points, because that's probably what we, when we think of what sort of photos are we usually looking for if we search for photos, if we want to do a book or whatever. So often it would be date related or, of course, people related. So I find a good start is always people.
Yeah.
And that can be in, I think we're going to talk about that later, like facial recognition, or it can be a keyword, either way.
Yeah.
But one can, of course, also add like captions or descriptions, so that be the place where to add some kind of story.
Yeah.
Have you used these, or what's?
So definitely, I think some of our key things, even just to sort of giving some people some examples on things that we might use, or that we would definitely recommend that you think about when you're going through this process. And often when you're going through and you're making a decision to go and put some structure and organisation to your group of photos, there's a lot. So, people have got a hefty collection. And so I would really encourage you to just think about this step first before you just randomly start picking through and adding some information to it. Point. Because it is time-consuming, but extremely beneficial if you really do want to do that sorting and organising once and have it remain attached to the photo. So there is a little bit, to do with that, but it's definitely worth having a bit of a planned attack rather than just sort of randomly going through, seeing 20 photos of when you were in a location and then just adding it on. So say you've done a trip and you've done the UK or you've done London or you've done, a particular town, and some of them you call them UK, some of them you call it, by the city name, and so a lot of pre-thought is really, really worth it. So some things that I have added in that I would encourage people, definitely facial recognition. Now, I think it's important also just to let people know that facial recognition is a searching mechanism. So it's not embedded in the information of the photo. So we're talking about metadata, which is information attached to the photo. Facial recognition is just a way to sort and find those photos. If you then eventually want to select those photos and add a keyword of that person's name, that's a hard-coded way to be able to find that photo again and keep that, maintain that information. So there is a bit of a difference when we're talking about facial recognition. So because there's some great programs out there, you know, even with Google Photos and with Mac Photos, that can look at the information, look at the faces, and they're brilliant, and they pull up, you know, hundreds of photos of that one person, which again is a search mechanism, but we're talking about then hard coding that information in. So people's names is definitely a good one to think about.
And then, so just to be clear on that, so then you find the people through the facial recognition, and then you add a keyword with their name. That's what you're saying, right?
Yes, exactly. Yes. So that's then hard coding in a tag to that file, to that photo. Yeah. But again, that is a personal choice. It's not necessary because the software, you know, these days are fantastic, and they're getting you know, better and better. So you can easily find things. But yeah, definitely looking at a way to sort photos by a person's facial recognition or name is definitely something to consider adding. Also keywords. So we can do another whole podcast just on keywords. And I think, you know, there really is a lot of benefit in being able to have a thought out process in what keywords you may like to use. And again, up front, it's in the planning, get yourself a journal and just write them down. It's a really a good way. I also look at rating photos. That's another form of information that we've talked about before, and that can be attached to the photo, sort of digitally imprinted. And then, you know, the years the photos are taken. If it's not automatically coming out of your device or your camera, then I would also look at making that information, you know, a hard-coded change on the photo itself, so it's an accurate year, so that you can find them. What about you? What are some examples that you use?
Yeah, talking of the years, what I actually like to do in, you know, in a perfect world, so to speak, is to rename the files using the date, the capture date of the photo, because it might sound a bit old-fashioned, it probably is, but renaming the file, I find it's always kind of the safest way to retain that information. Because the things that we just mentioned with keywords and rating and all those things, things can go wrong when you move the files. So sometimes they would be stripped, that information would be stripped off the photo or off the file, and that, you know, maybe you don't even realise it's happened, and then you lose things, which is not ideal.
So I'm kind of much effort in.
Person, I always think, the file name, you know, things must really go badly wrong to lose the file name. So I do like to change the file name, but it's so time consuming. So ideally, you know, it's not a realistic thing for many people to do. So I do use keywords. And especially when you can work a bit in batch, maybe it might be less time consuming than one thinks at first. But you made a really good point about having like a keyword list, being consistent, because, you know, I always use the example of when you travel, you could have a keyword travel or trip or holiday. There's different names for the same thing, and it's easier when you're consistent.
Exactly.
How do you handle that?
Yeah, absolutely the same thing. Having a legend or a key, you know, a key that sort of just tallies all of those things in. And it's just, again, a habit to get into and get yourself your logbook that we've talked about and just, you know, open up to a blank page and reference that at the front or something so you know where that is. And once once you get started, you know, and it's true, you have, you know, a parent name and then the other parent name and then you have kids and then you have a parent with kids as a keyword. You know, it can get really messy really quickly. And I think that's where, you know, in this metadata area, and hopefully we can get that message across to you today, is really just think about that longer term solution, because this is an international standard. This is definitely something that is being recognised in new software that's coming out, in all different types of devices that we take photos with. It's a standard, and more information will be captured on there. So it's definitely not going away.
No.
And it's definitely worth putting that thought in originally, and just having, a bit of a system in place so that you can very quickly add those keywords. And then when you're sorting, you can just have a look at what that keyword list is, and it's very easy to find photos. Just say, for example, you've got a pet, and you may have, the name of the pet or a nickname for the pet. Just choose one, write it on the list, and be done with it. So it doesn't have to be difficult. It's just a little bit of pre-planning. Goes a long way.
And that's a good point with names, because we often have nicknames for people, and then it's like, how do you call them in the keyword list?
Or do you call yourself by mum, or is it grandma, and then do you have your name? So always saying is, make that decision up front before you go into all the work, and it will definitely make it a lot easier.
And I think the keywords is really one of the easiest to add, and the benefits are enormous when you've got keywords.
And really you can find any photo if you've got a keyword, a date, maybe a location or a person's name. And it really does just narrows down that ability to be able to find a photo. You might remember that it was, a certain location that you were in, that you were looking for, a historical photo of a house that you went to. But it's the location. So if you've got that in there, then it really does help narrow it down. So, and what's the benefits? What are some of the benefits of why people should or could make that choice to maybe add in keywords?
Look, it's basically in any time you need a photo, you're looking for a photo. It could be photo books, or if you want to do a slideshow, or anything really.
As a quick gift for somebody.
And often one information is not enough, especially when you think of, these days it's not uncommon that people have 40,000-50,000 digital photos in their hubs. So if you then search by a name, let's say you're looking for your spouse's name, there will be thousands of photos of him. So you might want to narrow it down and add another keyword, or add a location, or a year. So we would operate with more than one, and to just narrow it down, and then we've got a smaller selection that we can choose from to create that book or whatever.
Exactly. And it could be the word birthday. And so you just put that birthday, but then you can link that then if you're doing a search for Chantal, then birthday is another keyword search, and then you put a year. You're very easily going to find, that birthday when you were 21,
Ooh, how long ago?
rather than having to have 21st birthday as the keyword. You can just put the birthday as the keyword, the person's name, and then a year, and then you'll find. So it's just it's sort of thinking about what you would use that for. That's going to be helpful. So one of the things that we were saying before about whether, if you're considering using this sort of additional way of organising your photos using metadata, I also like to use as much of the information as I can. And like I said, in these programs these days, there really is a lot that you can work with naturally. And even, there's some, you could search dog, just say you don't have a keyword for dog, and it'll bring up every dog you've ever, even if it's in the background of a photo. And, the intelligence of some of these programs now, it can say, lake or something like that. Every photo of a lake or tractor.
It really comes in handy. I have
phenomenal.
used it recently a few times. It's awesome.
It is fantastic. So, it really is a consideration about your keywording and how much time and organisation you want to put into it. Now, we just sort of wanted to present you with some options. But how do you deal with, say, the backlog of photos or keywording in the future? Also, because, like you say, people can have 40, 50, 100,000. Really, that's amazing how many, and that's a lot to backlog.
Oh, look,
What's your sort of take on that?
With digital clients, how do I put that? I would encourage them to slowly but surely work through their backlog. So my usual recommendation, depending a bit on what software they use, I have a lot of Mac clients, so they would work with Mac or Photos for Mac, which does have a facial recognition included. So I often recommend do that, and sometimes it takes a while because it will scan the photos and learn along the way.
Yes,
and it's actually good fun too. People love it.
Oh, it is. I love it going through that
to
with
do
clients.
that.
They do. Yeah.
And sometimes it's quite accurate, but sometimes it's a bit, or it will pick up cousins from a person. So you see, okay, there is a facial recognition, but it's actually the wrong person.
Yeah, so
it's really interesting. And
it is.
The programs are learning and becoming better and more accurate. It's probably never going to be 100% accurate, but it's good fun, and I feel it's a great start when you do have a big backlog to use facial recognition if you can, because that's one of the fastest way to then tag people.
Yeah,
because as you mentioned before, once you've got it creates like virtual albums of that one person, and then you can just select all these photos and add the keyword with the name of that person, and bang, you've got it. It's a quick way, and I like to recommend that for the backlog. Really, if you're not going to do anything else, that's kind of the first step, and that already is a lot. I feel.
That's good. That's fantastic. And then from there, if they come up with if they choose to do keyword, and adding metadata into a photo, then they can just come up with their list of selected words that they think that they might like to be able to sort by, and then start adding them from this day forward, sort of thing. Or if then slowly over time.
That's actually more realistic for when I think back to my clients, pretty much none of them really work through the backlog. So it is time consuming, and we're all busy. So I often recommend, okay, we've got a system in place now. That's what you can do in the future. Let's say you work monthly on your photos, you download them from the phone, whatever. And then it's not very time consuming to add a few keywords, to choose your favorites, to delete, of course, first. You don't want to keep every single one. So I feel that's often easier. Because it can be, the backlog is just too overwhelming.
Exactly. So don't get too caught up with it, but just be encouraged moving forward that you can make some changes and decisions and add it in. So when we're talking about adding in metadata to a photo, there's a few ways to do that. You can do that outside of a program, or you can do it inside of a program. So what we're talking about when we say that is, just say you've got Google Photos or Amazon Photos, or you've got, Mac, if you're a Mac user, Photos. There's different ways to add in information to a photo within a program like that. And then you can also add that information just in the properties of the photo in either a Mac or Windows as well.
So how would you do that on a Windows, for example?
So you'd right click on there and you'd get pull up the information on the photo, and then there's fields. Usually they come in tabs depending on the version of Windows that you've got. So just look through the tabs, and then you'll see, and then there literally just is a field you can text information into. So say with the keyword, when you tab, it'll then come across into a next into the next word as well. So and that's really it. And you can do that in bulk, and you can get all fancy with groups of photos and things like that. So there's lots of information out there on the web, but I think it's just a good understanding that people can either go through and do that in Windows or in Finder.
We don't need special software really. It can be done with whatever you have at
you can
home.
do it outside of all these programs as well, because some people like to organise their photos outside of a proprietary program. So that gives them the option to do that as well. Then if you want to get fancy, there are a few software programs that we use as organisers that we thought we'd tell you about. What are some of those, Chantal, that, just to keep, and we'll put these links also in the show notes for people as well if they want to. There's no affiliate that we're with them at all. It's just what we've chosen to use.
One that I really like using also for my own personal photos is Photo Mechanic.
Yep.
It doesn't come quite cheap, but it's a really, really good program. And you can do so much with it. I'm nowhere near knowing or using all their features. Oh, it's a phenomenal program. Kind of use it for basic stuff like the keywords. But again, you can, in that program, for example, talking about keywords, you can have like a keyword list. So you save that, and you can even save different lists. And then it always, once you enter the keyword, it's there. And you can just, tick it and choose it, pick from the list. That's another way, of course. That way you've got the consistency and you don't have typos and stuff like that. And you can do much more, of course, in that program. But in terms of metadata, I like to use Photo Mechanic, and it's really fast. You can work in batches.
And you can create, what I would call, say, a stamp.
Yes.
You would say you've got a group of 50 photos and they've all got the same location. You were at an event, you want to put an event name, say it's at a wedding, and you want to, put some information about that on the photo. Then you have a template, and you can assign that template with all of the fields that you've chosen. Maybe you've even got a copyright of the photo on there. For your own self, because so that program Photo Mechanic was really used. It was actually used for uploading in media, so information and newspapers. And
what I like about it too is that it's straight away embedded in the file. You don't have to export it or to save it in a special way to make it stick. So that's what you want to make sure when you work with any program, that it actually, it's as easy as possible and that it stays. It's not, if you move the photo out of there and then you lose everything you've done, you don't want that. So, and Photo Mechanic definitely doesn't do that. So it is embedded, and that's what I like about it. It's like a one-touch thing.
Yes.
So, What else are you using?
So Adobe Bridge and Lightroom are some of the Adobe products that are also available to do that. But I actually use Photo Mechanic for because it's a Windows and a Mac-based program. Yes. So it really is, you're able to use that across all the different platforms that you might need to really do that. So, for me, it's definitely been, as an organiser, it's been worth that investment, but it's definitely, there's a lot more information that you need, but really it's quite user-friendly. It's easy to get in there and just get some key lists going. And
Adobe, I always find, I do like the Adobe products. I work a lot with Bridge and Lightroom, but I find they're not self-explanatory at all.
Yeah, a lot more technically involved. Yeah.
But they are good programs. They can do all that too. Adobe Bridge, of course, has the advantage that it's free. All you need is a free account with Adobe, and then you can download it and use it. And again, it also works on Windows and Macs. That's another good thing.
Which is good.
And, you can go on YouTube and find tutorials about anything these days.
Yes.
And I probably would recommend that. They're not really self-explanatory. But again, with Adobe Bridge, it's the same advantage, I feel like, with Photo Mechanic. It is straight away embedded in the file. You don't have to import and export. It actually accesses the file from wherever you have it stored, let's say on your hard drive, in your picture folders.
Yeah.
That's where it goes. And whatever you add, it will be straight away in that file.
Yeah. And I think that's really important for people to know when they're listening and you're thinking about metadata on your photos, is some programs, if you're in, say, a proprietary program, so it could be a Google, it could be Amazon, we've talked about, Mac photos, And depending on the one that you're in, they may not keep that information attached to the photo. So you've gone and put in hours of work, and like we were talking about, it's imprinted on the photo permanently.
Yeah.
That's something like, if you're outside of a program, like in Windows or Finder, Explorer or Finder, or in Photo Mechanic. But sometimes you've done all this work, and you find people that have done all this work, and then they move from one program to another program, and they haven't got that information. So we just really encourage you, just do that bit of homework for yourself if you are going to take the time to add in this, some really good information onto your photos and have it be done once and properly.
Yes.
Just make sure that you're using a format that will, maintain that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
best
sometimes
practice, that's for sure.
it happens without realising. So we might only realise later that we've lost metadata.
Yeah.
That's
and I think too that's probably why, this standard, universal standard is becoming even more and more recognised because, especially with APO, with the association that we belong to, as an organisation, we're definitely a part of that as well in maintaining the direction of those standards and just being a part of where that's sort of sits in different programs. So there is a lot of information out there, but it's definitely something to consider. Yeah, when you're going through.
Do we want to finish up with the best practice tips that we have?
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So one of the first ones that we'd recommend really and that we've mentioned is to be specific, especially in terms of keywords. Double check, the spelling. You don't want to have any typos because that will make it harder later to find it.
Yeah.
Obviously. Make it easy to read, simple, straightforward, grammatically correct, and consistency. That's the big thing. Be consistent.
Absolutely. Another best practice that we would recommend is this keyword reference list. So, really just, don't get too technical with it. Just think of a new a phrase that you're using, vacation or skiing, if you're, or something like that, and just write it down on your list and then just be consistent.
Yes. Yeah.
And so that reference list is a really good one as well.
Yeah. And you can easily keep that in your logbook.
Yep.
Or, if it's a separate list, just put it in there or, Yep. That's the easiest.
That's it. Fantastic. Wonderful. Well, thanks very much. As always, a pleasure talking with you, Chantal.
Likewise. Thank you.
So we hope you've enjoyed our podcast today on metadata and understanding a little bit more about metadata. There is a lot of information out there. So we just encourage you, if this is an area you want to get into, as always, pop us some information onto our Facebook page and we can help out with any questions or even just point you into the direction on, with the website or new information that's come up.
Yeah, we'll have a few links.
Yeah, definitely to
notes
to the Photo Mechanic and things like that as well, and even to the if you want to get all techy, and we'll put a link up to the actual standards website page, so you can have a look at that if it's something you're interested in.
Very good.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Thanks, Chantal.
See you next time.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of DIY photo organising and found some inspiration, useful tips and strategies to support your photo projects.
We'd love to invite you to pop over to our Facebook page, DIY Photo Organising, and we welcome your questions, feedback and any future topics that you'd like us to cover. If there is someone you'd love to share this with, please click on share to help others take control of their photos too. Remember, have a look through our show notes for links to helpful information. I'm Fiona from Photo Helper.
And I'm Chantal from Simply in Order Photo Organising. And remember, we believe in you and you can do this.